there is still a chance to fight this proposal, and there's still a chance to stop it. And it's not the time to give up hope yet. There's still time, and there's still plenty of things we can all do to advocate for this space.
I'm Wendy. I'm the chairperson for Save Whitewebbs. We're a community group which started in January of this year, and we are all passionate about saving Whitewebbs, this ancient woodland with its unique wildlife that if we lose it, we will never ever get it back. And as a country, we are losing too many of these ancient woodlands. So that's why we've started our campaign. We're fighting the Enfield Council to make sure that our voice and the voice of the whole community is heard, which is why we're here today, making these videos.
My name's Noel. I've been living in Enfield for about 35 years.
I'm Jackie.
My name's Caroline.
Daniela.
My name is Ryan, and I have been living in Enfield for all my life.
I've lived in this area for about 8 years now.
I've lived in Enfield over 50 years, so I'm kind of giving my age away, but yeah, long-time resident in Enfield.
I'm Rachel.
Hey, I'm Kev.
We've lived here for a year.
43 years. So I know my way from one end of the borough to the other for the most part.
The first time I remember visiting Whitewebbs was over 50 years ago.
Well, I've been visiting Whitewebbs Park for many years, both as a cyclist and as a dog walker, and just to walk for recreation as well.
How long have I been visiting Whitewebbs for? Virtually every day, weather permitting. Actually, weather not permitting, go anyway. So.
Oh, as often as I can, so I at least try and make sure I go at least, say, 2 or 3 times a week if I can.
I remember when we first discovered the kind of foresty area.
Oh, yeah.
And it was getting darker and darker, and it was actually really muddy. So we all remember just kind of trudging through this like quite thick mud to try and get out. And we actually ended up near here, near the church. But that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. In hindsight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Whitewebbs has always been part of an ancient woodland. There was a communal golf course on it, which is now being rewilded, and it's gone back to nature as the golf course was closed just before the end of the pandemic. But it's always been accessible. The community has always had access to it, to be able to free roam. It's not being restricted. There haven't been big boards put up or fences put up. And that's what this proposal does. It blocks it off to the community. No longer will you be able to walk your dog there. The creatures and the animals that live there will have to be moved or be relocated. That has never happened before in its history, even when it was a golf course. Everybody had free rein in certain hours of the day to use it. This is absolutely real destruction.
We never knew it as an active golf course. For us, it's just been a wonderful, wild space. And I think it's so important to maintain and save those wild spaces.
I know that it was a golf course at one time, a few years ago, and then it's rewilded itself, and it's just such a glorious space now.
The golf course was a wonderful golf course and should have been providing plenty of money to maintain the park. The level of knowledge is fairly limited. In particular, the financial justification for closing the golf course, because the council initially deliberately hid this information. The original key decision report that was prepared had the financial information in it, but it was in a confidential appendix, which nobody could see.
I mean, they're planning to build 9 pitches, which is a lot of pitches. I'm not sure they need that many. But I went to the Spurs consultation twice, had a long chat with loads of them, of their representatives. It was a very informative discussion. But I didn't come away from it feeling that it was going to benefit the people of Enfield to the extent that both sides, Spurs and the council, suggest it might.
You could face a situation down the road, say maybe 25, 50 years, and they then decide to develop it into a housing estate, which is equally possible given that that is the current fate of the previous training ground in the Cheshunt area.
Also, I guess it's the damage that's then going to happen to the area, plus the wildlife that's already in existence there. That's going to be damaged as well.
I'm training to be a horticulturist. Yeah, there's some amazing plants, wildlife. I understand from the plans that have been proposed that they're going to be cutting down trees and planting trees. So there's lots of things that don't quite make sense. I'm concerned about the drainage. If they're going to be using, taking up the land and putting pitches in, and understand some of those are AstroTurf, that will have a knock-on effect on the local drainage and the water table. We really need to know just what the impact is going to be on the green space, you know, from an environmental perspective.
It will be flattened and it will be fenced off, not being able to be used by the general public. It's not an appropriate use for a public park. Nowhere else in the borough really do you see this being done.
As part of our campaign group, we're very keen to emphasise what the wildlife and fauna is that's here and why it needs protecting. So we've commissioned our own wildlife survey, and we're going to take that to the Ministry of the Environment, where we use it in the court battle against Enfield Council, because we're well aware at the moment they've signed an agreement with Tottenham Hotspur not to conduct an environment impact assessment because they don't feel that the wildlife here is sufficiently rare or endangered. We're now very keen to then forward that to Ministry of the Environment and any legal body that's responsible for protecting this wildlife and get them to help fight our case.
I think what worries me about this recent development is that it feels a bit like a creeping land grab. We were not given the opportunity to understand what the present predicament was about the golf course or the fact that it had to stop. We weren't given any kind of involvement in potential other scenarios. And this whole business of where we are today, with this supposedly being the only option, I think disturbs me.
I happen to be a Spurs supporter, not always easy. They're a nice club, but there is absolutely no reason for them to set aside part of a public park for their exclusive use.
I'm all for women's football, but I'm also a massive fan of nature, and I just think it's so important for the mental health of the community, and I think it would massively decrease the value of the space.
I actually have recently got into women's football. I like the fact that there is this interest in women's football, and I'm not opposed to have a kind of place for this to develop even further. I just think there are other places where that can happen.
It's well known that Enfield Town has a very thriving relationship with Tottenham Hotspur, which is great. Spurs have helped Enfield Town enormously. But I separate that from what is going to happen or might happen. And I get completely that the growth of ladies, women's football is massive. I get that. But I've yet to see evidence, clear evidence, that young girls, teenagers, female football fans in the borough, living in the borough, will benefit from what is effectively an elite academy.
It's the most absurd place to put a ladies' academy for disadvantaged people to the borough who live several miles away. If you're going to have an academy for disadvantaged people, put it where it's needed.
Yeah, it's difficult being a football fan and seeing what's happening with Whitewebbs. It's great for the area and for football in general, but taking away the area that we have and is used by so many people it's just wrong.
I do like football. I'm a great supporter, and I must say I'm also a great supporter of women's football because how that's developed is huge. But I think it doesn't make sense that they're promoting it under women's football. Why do that? It's not really understanding the issues of women's football, quite frankly.
We've got the privilege right now to see how what was a golf course come back to a kind of biodiverse new story, really, and we're missing what the new story is, which is happening right under our feet.
There are few enough open spaces in the town, and they're there and they were set aside for use by the public, and to sell it off to a commercial operation I think is simply wrong. That's not what the council are there for. They're not there to make money out of commercial companies. They're there to provide good facilities for the population who can live well in here and feel well with themselves.
What are my opinions on what the council are doing? Probably what I want to say I couldn't say to camera. But you know, this is it's a farce and it's a scandal, and it's every other anti-council pro-Whitewebbs word that you could find. There was supposed to be consultation with the residents. Consultation, my backside, I think, is probably the cleanest way of putting it. There really hasn't been any. They say there has, but there hasn't. A few leaflets thrown through doors, but it's pretty much a fait accompli as far as the council are concerned. I understand a big time that local councils are having their budgets slashed by government. I get that. But there are ways of dealing with that, and building on prime green belt for thousands of local residents isn't one of them.
I think it's typical that the corporations are just eroding all kind of community-based areas and you know, freedoms, etc. And money talks, and it shouldn't. You know, the community comes first. People before profit is something, you know, I would say to that. It's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's right to say.
Spurs Football Club already has a 77-acre state-of-the-art training facility not a mile up the road from Whitewebbs Park, also built on what was prime greenbelt agricultural land at the time. It has 15 full-size grass pitches and 1.5 outdoor artificial pitches, all floodlit, plus a full-size artificial pitch inside the huge main building. Yet the Spurs first team have just 4 of these solely for their use. There is already room for the women's team and any youth groups in Hotspur Way, as they too now have a 562 square metre building of their own, with changing rooms, meeting rooms, a gym, kitchen, offices and even storage space. So what is the real reason Spurs and Enfield Council are conspiring to steal our last remaining truly wild park from us and bulldoze 60 acres to be covered in not so eco-friendly plastic pitches? Will this become apparent when Spurs give up the lease of this beautifully flattened area and sell it off cheap to a housing developer? No doubt one that is also deeply connected to the Spurs Corporation. Are we going to see a repeat of the Cheshunt development fiasco? Everything may look fancy and eco-friendly on paper, but I've seen for myself the fencing masquerading as historic boundaries already in existence around Hotspur Way. Can we expect the same right across the beautiful wild park of Whitewebbs? You talk of making the park more accessible, but how is giving almost 100 acres of it away to Spurs achieving that? It's a wild park, and it shouldn't be left to the officials that have no idea what it takes to make true countryside thrive. Officials that are only interested in their own agendas for the so-called future plan. You've already stolen Cruise Hill Golf Course and hundreds more acres of prime greenbelt earmarked for housing developments, so keep your hands off our park. It's for the people of Enfield, not the elite of Spurs and Enfield Council to line their pockets with. I want it officially known that I strongly object to the lease and development of Whitewebbs Park and Golf Course. Thank you very much.
There are cases of other environmental groups, community groups have done just this recently, where it's gone to court and they've beaten the odds. So we want to be one of those success stories with everyone's help. People think it's a done deal, it isn't. It isn't a done deal until the bulldozers turn up. So if we can then act and make our voice heard, get the message out there and get as many people as possible complaining and objecting to this, we can get the publicity behind us and hopefully get it stopped. So one of the things, obviously, you can write to your MP, and to help facilitate that, we've got a web-based app which can give you some templates. So the easiest way to register with us is if you email at info@savewhitewebbs. We've also got some QR codes on the notice board at Whitewebbs, near the Whitewebbs Cafe, that people can scan the QR code and they can register. Once you've registered with us, we can keep you informed of events like this, fundraising events we're doing. We have regular meetings, usually once a month, where we discuss the plan of action and where we are with our campaign. Please, get involved. We're a very friendly group. We have a lot of fun actually doing the fundraising. It's got a wonderful community spirit. And even if you feel it's only a small part that you're playing, collectively it makes a big difference. And that's the key. Together we can beat this. And so, please join, please email us and look out for the notices on the Save Whitewebbs wall.